This year in Crystal version, the theme has been normal types, so today I'm going to use 3 of them that have the slow growth rate: Miltank, Tauros, and Snorlax. These are the rules for the solo challenges. You can check them out in the description. Now, you might notice that I have done a Snorlax playthrough in Crystal version before on my channel. I just think that those results are a little bit stale. If we look at the current rankings in my tier list, Snorlax is stuck at the top of the C tier ahead of Pokemon like Umbreon, Sneasel, Venomoth, and Piloswine. Those 4 are not particularly good at solo running the game. Umbreon is defensive, Sneasel has a trash typing and trash stats to go along with it. Venomoth is just overall not very good, even though it has a special place in my heart as an ice-electric type. And Piloswine is honestly dreadful to use in a solo challenge. I don't know why they gave that thing the slow growth rate. It's really frustrating. It also doesn't learn Dig. Anyway, I think Snorlax should be able to dramatically outperform these Pokemon and rise through the rankings today. I also expect that Tauros and Miltank are going to do fairly well, but I don't have extremely high hopes for them. There are a couple of factors that are going to hold them back. And if you don't know Generation 2, you might be a bit confused about this because they both have fantastic stats. As male and female counterparts of each other, they share the same base stat total of 490. Miltank has 95 HP, 80 attack, 105 defense, 100 speed, and they both have 40 special attack and 70 special defense. Tauros has its other 4 stats distributed in a different way: 75 HP, 100 attack, 95 defense, and 110 speed. So it's slightly faster, and it's a little bit more offensively geared when compared with Miltank. Snorlax has the advantage when it comes to base stats because it has a total of 540, 50 more than both Tauros and Miltank. Although for a solo challenge, its stats are not distributed in the most optimal way. 160 HP, 110 attack, 65 defense, and special attack, 30 speed, and 110 special defense. The fact that Snorlax is big, sleepy, and slow is going to hold it back because almost every enemy in the game is going to attack it before it gets to move. And you might not think that this is a big deal, but Snorlax has to watch the enemy print a bunch of text every turn, and that will slow it down by a meaningful amount. Plus, it's also going to be exposed to status conditions, stat-altering moves, and attacks. Miltank and Tauros, on the other hand, are going to outspeed every adversary in the game. I mean that. The Johto level curve is really wonky, and there are so many reasons why the player's Pokemon is just always faster than the opponent's when you have a decent amount of base speed. Somewhere in the 75 to 85 range is where you start moving faster than every enemy. Well, unless the slow growth rate holds these Pokemon back so much that they're not able to move first against a Pokemon like Lance's Aerodactyl or Red's Espeon. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I anticipate both Miltank and Tauros will be moving faster than those key threats. Okay, let's get into Miltank's playthrough. In the early game, I fight some optional trainers just to level up a little bit more before I head into Falkner's gym at 7. Birdkeeper Abe is who I'm worried about here. His level 9 Spearow can cause a lot of problems spamming Peck over and over again, but Miltank didn't need to be worried here because it has outrageous defense, meaning that Peck is hardly leaving a scratch, and as a result I pull through the fight still with green health left over. Okay, time to face Falkner. It would be nice for Miltank to have rollout at this point in the game. It doesn't. This isn't going to matter though. I have defense curl, so I can raise my defense and take almost no damage from both Pidgey and Pidgeotto. Then while Tackle isn't doing very much damage per turn, I can slowly whittle his Pokemon down. I also have a Berry for good measure. It heals a bit of health, but overall I don't even think I needed it. Falkner is just straightforward and easy when using Miltank. Now my regular format for Versus videos is switching over to the next Pokemon after defeating the first gym leader. I would go through the first 3, and then once we beat Falkner for the 3rd time, continue with that Pokemon until say the 3rd or 4th gym. Usually Morty in Pokemon Crystal, since Bugsy and Whitney are generally not very challenging. In this case though, we're going to continue with Miltank, because the early game boss is not actually a gym leader. Now, I intentionally started the video with Miltank because it is by far the best of these 3 Pokemon in the early game. After defeating Falkner, I teach it Mud Slap with the TM, and then I crush through the rockets and head into Bugsy's gym. I didn't do training between Violet City and Azalea Town, but I didn't need to because inside the gym I level up to 13 and get Stomp. This is a fantastic normal type move, it gets the same type attack bonus, and it also has a 30% chance to flinch the opponent. So check out how easy Bugsy is for Miltank. I can set up Defense Curl 6 times on the Metapod, ensuring that when the Scyther comes in and starts using Fury Cutter, it's going to do almost no damage. There is a downside to this, I get hit by String Shot, so my Miltank is kind of slow now, although it was never going to be faster than the Scyther at this level. So maybe the slow growth rate is going to cause it to move second against Pokemon. In this case though, the Scyther just isn't doing enough damage. Miltank has a bad scenario here because it is poisoned, but Stomp 3 hits, it got a critical hit on turn 1, but even without that, I think I still would have pulled through. Okay, so this is where things get a little bit more complicated for normal types in the early game. On the Rivals team, we have a Ghastly. Luckily for Miltank, it learns Mud Slap from Falkner, and it's also very fast, so it can move first, hit the Ghastly, and do less than half. Alright, that's not ideal. Luckily for me, the fact that I'm lowering accuracy means that both Hypnosis and Spite are less likely to do anything to me, and these two moves together can surprisingly cause a reset for a normal type. If you get put to sleep, the Ghastly knows that it can't hit you with Lick, so it's only going to choose Spite, reducing the PP of a move like Mud Slap over and over again. This move already only has 10 power points, so it's very easy to get completely drained and then be unable to deal damage to the Ghastly. Now I could play slowly, waiting for it to either use Struggle or for Miltank to use Struggle, but it makes more sense from a speed perspective to just reset and try Mud Slap again. In this case though, I pull through with no issues against the Ghastly, 2-shot the following Zubat, and then Bayleaf comes in. Now it's a bit scary with Razor Leafs if these crit multiple times. Luckily for me, it only crits a single time, bringing Miltank to orange health, and my Stomp is able to 3-hit. No problems against the rival when using Miltank. Okay, so this is the boss in the early game that I've been most worried about with these normal types. For one of them, no problems at all, but for Snorlax, in the first playthrough I did with it on the channel, it had its first reset to the rival in Azalea Town. Now since I've run this thing before on the channel, I'm going to go through it very quickly whenever I do sections on it in this video. For Falkner, you can see that my approach was similar to Miltank, but I did less training. I arrive at him at level 7, I only have Tackle, but still with a berry, Snorlax has more than enough HP that it can pull through and defeat his birds. Just like Miltank, Tauros learns Mud Slap, so I have a solution to the Ghastly. But I am going to do some additional training before I reach Azalea Town. I was thinking that it might make sense to train to 15 to get Defense Curl before Bugsy in order to make him very simple. In the end though, I don't quite make it, being only level 14 before I face the gym leader. I didn't want to waste time with backtracking for additional experience points, so I'll just see if Snorlax can pull it off at this level. And the answer is no, if I get poisoned by the Kakuna. The passive damage then each turn is just far too much. I think for this fight the solution was just holding a Poison Cure Berry, but even then I wanted to play more safely, so I level up to 15 and then come back with Defense Curl. While I am forgetting the Poison Cure Berry, my increased defenses make this fight trivial and I move on to the rival. So is the Ghastly going to get me because it is faster than Snorlax? Since I played Snorlax previously though, I have a small trick here. I can use Amnesia on the first turn. This is a way I can anticipate the Ghastly going for something like Spite on the second turn and save some PP on Mud Slap. Also, setting up Amnesia is advantageous because the Bayleaf is going to hit with Razor Leaf, which is a special move. Now there is a more consistent way to play here, but I'll talk about that in the follow-up attempt. After one Amnesia, I choose to use Mud Slap and I 2-shot the Ghastly. I don't get hit by Spite or Hypnosis, so Snorlax is likely going to win here. Unless the Zubat messes me up eternally with Supersonic. Sometimes that happens, luckily not today. Bayleaf is next. Razor Leaf isn't doing very much damage because of my ridiculous special defense stat, and I'm able to easily pull through with Tackle. Okay, so this is where we move on to Tauros, and now we're going to do a small move pool review, which I have delayed until this portion of the video. So, through level up, Tauros gets Tackle, Tail Whip, Rage, Horn Attack, Scary Face, Pursuit at level 26, Rest, Thrash, and Takedown. And then through TM and HM he gets a wide range of moves, especially some good coverage, like Blizzard, Icy Wind, Iron Tail, Earthquake, Fire Blast, and Surf. And to make this even better, it also gets all 3 of the tutor moves, which doesn't really make sense to me, but okay, I'll take it. Flamethrower, Thunderbolt, and Ice Beam. Now, its starting set, Tackle and Tail Whip, is pretty good. Rage in Generation 2 is absolutely fantastic. Horn Attack is a base 65 power move that gets the same type attack bonus, and it learns this at level 13 just like Miltank's Stomp. However, it has no secondary effect, so that's a small disadvantage, but I'm sure some of you have picked it up. The thing that is really going to hold Tauros back is the fact that it does not learn Mud Slap. Before we examine how I'm going to manage the rivals Ghastly, let's first take on Falkner. Here I've learned Rage, and this move is so good in Generation 2, it doesn't work like it does in Generation 1 or Generation 3. When my Pokemon is hit, I don't raise my attack stat, instead it just raises a separate Rage counter, multiplying the amount of damage I do by that Rage counter. As you can see here, it makes Falkner completely trivial, especially when I get a critical hit along the way. I don't even use my berry during this battle. Now I do some additional training in the next section of the game against Ralph, but I'm not going to do too much more because this is mostly just pointless. Leveling up is not going to help me defeat the rival, and provided I reach 13 and get Horn Attack fairly soon before the rival, or more ideally before Bugsy, I think I'm going to be fine. I get the powerful normal type move far before I reach Bugsy, so this second gym leader should be a breeze. Now I was focusing on learning Horn Attack for the rival, specifically because Rage is really good against Bugsy. His Metapod and Kakuna know weak moves, Tackle and Poison Sting, so they can stack up my Rage counter before the Scyther comes in. And then the fact that it's using Fury Cutter is just going to benefit Rage even more. Therefore, Bugsy is completely trivial. But now I am level 15 and I'm left in a rough place. I have two options to take on the rivals Ghastly. Either level to 26 and get Pursuit, which is obviously not worth it, or spam out all of my PP and use Struggle against the Ghastly. I guess there is sort of a third option, which is I could fight the Ghastly, use a move like Tail Whip so that when it uses Spite, it's draining PP of a move I don't care about. Maybe Ghastly would run out of PP before Tauros, and then it would knock itself out using Struggle. I don't think this is a good strategy. It seems extremely slow and unpredictable to me, so that's not what I'm going to go for. In order to make the most out of depleting my PP, I'm going to backtrack through Union Cave and the route south of Violet City. I can fight all of the trainers here for boosted experience, and this levels Tauros up to 18 by the time I'm ready to take on the rival using Struggle. The unfortunate thing about having to use this strategy against the rival's first Pokemon is that I will have to continue using Struggle against the Zubat and the Bayleaf. I'm holding a berry to ensure that I have the most health possible, but things can still go wrong. I'm not one-hitting his Pokemon because my level isn't high enough, so Zubat survives, uses Supersonic, and Tauros hits itself. Not once, but twice. This is really bad. I knock out the Zubat on the next turn, move on to the Bayleaf, but Tauros is still confused, hits itself again. Bayleaf establishes Reflect, and that's that. Tauros is not going to be able to win. So essentially, this fight is pure luck. In the next battle, I do get a better damage range on the Ghastly, so I one-shot, which I guess is convenient, although it can't really do anything to me, just waste my time. What I really want is the Zubat's Supersonic to miss, and it does. That allows me to make it to the Bayleaf with green health and no status condition. But the Grass type has something to say about this. It chooses Poison Powder, poisoning Tauros, and now every turn my health is getting sapped away. I consider myself pretty lucky here, because Bayleaf misses with a Razor Leaf, and it doesn't choose to go for Reflect. Without its defense, Bayleaf is taking a quarter in damage from Struggle every turn, and Tauros has just enough health to pull through with a victory. Okay, I'm ready for this bull to be truly unleashed. Inside the forest, I get the TM for Headbutt, a base 70 power normal type move that all three of these Pokemon can learn. That said, it's going to be a lot better for Tauros and Miltank because they have the speed to get the secondary effect. Okay, time to head into Whitney's gym, and all of you should prepare yourself. This battle is absolutely wild. Okay, Whitney's first Pokemon is Clefairy. This thing likes to use Metronome. Also, my overlay likes to glitch apparently. It says that Tauros is a poison type right now. I have no idea why. Anyways, the Clefairy goes for Metronome, and guess what it rolls? It rolls Self-Destruct, which gets the same type attack bonus, does massive damage, and Tauros goes from full health down to orange. It only has 17 hit points remaining. Alright, I am not liking my chances here. I go for Headbutt, and it does a third to Miltank, so I'm going to need to attack at least 2 more times. Instead of setting up Rollout, Miltank then goes for Stomp, and guess how much damage it does? 16 hit points of damage, leaving Tauros on 1 health. So I will lose if the Miltank attacks me again, but I can move first with Headbutt and potentially flinch. Miltank though seems to have inner focus. It doesn't flinch, goes for Rollout, and misses. As a result, I get one more Headbutt in and knock out the cow. After most of these battles, I like to make one sentence that's like a small summary of how the battle went. Usually, I like to mention to you if I thought the fight was lucky or unlucky, just so you could get a sense for how my strategy works against the trainer. In this case, though, I got both unlucky, like extremely unlucky right at the beginning of the battle, and then I got the perfect luck right at the end, which allowed Tauros to pull through. Fights like this are the reason that I love doing solo challenges, especially doing multiple attempts, because moments like this happen and they're always so exciting. Okay, so let's talk about Tauros' options for Morty, who's coming up next. Unlike the ghosts before, I have a few more options. Now, hidden power in first playthroughs of Crystal is banned, and I am treating all 3 of these runs as first playthroughs, including Snorlax's, although it technically is a 3rd playthrough. So that's not an option, but I'm getting close to 26, so Pursuit might be available. Although, I don't actually think it's the best option, because with super effective damage it will have an effective power of 80, whereas after I beat the Kimono Girls I get access to Surf, and it has an effective power of 95. So reluctantly a special move has to be my answers for the ghosts in this section of the game. The first one is on the Rivals team, it's Haunter. It's level 20 and I'm not going to be able to one-shot, and that is even after it uses Curse, which is slightly unfortunate. Although in Generation 2 the turn that Curse is inflicted it doesn't do damage, and if you knock out the opposing Pokemon, you also don't take damage from this status condition. This fact is very convenient for Tauros, because I have to two-shot the Magnemite. It confuses me with Supersonic. Luckily, this time around, Tauros isn't hitting itself. The Steel-type faints, and then I can use Headbutt against the Zubat. Tauros snaps out of confusion, one-shots, and moves on to the Bayleaf. I'm over-leveled now, I have a fantastic Normal-type move, I don't have to rely on Struggle. Also, Tauros gets a critical hit, but Bayleaf hangs on. It goes for Razor Leaf, luckily not getting a critical hit, and as a result, I knock out the rival's final Pokemon. The damage ranges I had against the Haunter do not make me confident about fighting Morty right away, so I'm going to go to the Lighthouse first to gain some extra experience before looping back to Ecruteak City. With the slow growth rate though, I don't gain that many levels, only reaching level 25 by the time I take out Dennis, who is the last trainer I usually fight in the Lighthouse. So I go back to the Ecruteak Gym and take on the trainers here. Luckily, these aren't a problem. The guy with 5 Ghastly, I can one-shot all of them using Surf. The following stage has 1 Haunter. In this case, Surf is able to do exactly half, and then Curse knocks out the Ghost. I always love it when this guy, who has a single Pokemon, uses Curse. It seems really silly. There's only 1 more medium, and she is also easy, but I'm thinking that Morty is going to be far more difficult. He has more Pokemon, and his Gengar is also quite good. I equip a Mint Berry, and now I'm ready to see if this is going to be possible. The first Ghastly and the Haunter both have Curse. I go for Surf and it does more damage than I was expecting, but still not enough to one-hit and avoid the status condition, which is unfortunate because now I'm going to take damage on the Haunter. It also hits with Hypnosis, burning my Mint Berry before the Gengar comes in. And then Surf does a pathetic amount of damage. It looks like 1/5. And that is just not gonna work out unless I get really lucky, like critting the Gengar, having it miss Hypnosis, and then knocking it out. So I do make it to the final Haunter, but I'm not able to two-shot, and so because of Curse damage, Tauros faints. This battle was way closer than I was expecting, but I think I got pretty lucky against the Gengar. Without a critical hit, I'm just not going to be able to knock it out. I fought the additional medium inside the gym to level up, but it doesn't give me enough to get to level 28. I tried Morty again, and I do make it by the Gengar to the final Haunter, but still with low HP, and it's not enough for Tauros. Okay, I'm going to go to the Lake of Rage next. Some people think that you need Surf to get there. You don't. Mount Mortar is not dark in Pokemon Crystal, so you also don't need Flash. I can just walk through this area, and there is this one Pokemaniac who has both of the Nidos. This is fantastic experience, so I'm going to fight him. I'm also going to fight a bunch of the trainers on the way to the Lake of Rage. While all of these experience yields aren't fantastic, I'm going to go over the damage rounding threshold at 28 and then 30 to hopefully get more significant damage against Morty's key Pokemon. If I can two-shot the final Haunter, then I think Tauros has a fighting chance. The guy with 2 Magikarp and 2 Gyarados is the last trainer I face in this region, and I am almost level 30, so after teleporting back to Ecruteak City, I head south, fight 1 trainer and some wild Pokemon to level up to 30. So will the damage rounding thresholds give me what I need? And the answer is no, I still can't one-shot the first Ghastly. That's a little bit disappointing. I think the second Haunter should be a 2-hit though, and it looks like the Gengar is now going to be a 3-hit. It is, it goes down, but Tauros can't survive the curse damage, so I take a 3rd reset here. Now one thing I haven't explored with Morty is that I could potentially do Blackout training against his first 3 Pokemon. After all, the Gengar gives pretty good experience, and then getting back into the battle doesn't take too long. There's not an extended puzzle that needs to be solved. I was thinking about doing this, but in the next battle I just crit the first Ghastly, so it's unable to use Curse. And then, because of the mechanics I mentioned before, I don't take damage from the first Haunter. Due to this, the Gengar is now going to need to be successful with 2 Hypnosises in a row, and that is unlikely, because the AI has a debuff on Hypnosis's accuracy, so when Morty uses it, it only has a 45% chance to hit. The first one does, using my Mint Berry, but the second one doesn't. I knock out the Gengar and move on to the final Haunter with half hit points. Surf is doing more than half. After Spite, I still have uses of Surf, and finally, Morty's defeated. Okay, back over to the cute and lovable Snorlax. Just north of Goldenrod City, I'm going to pick up the TM for Rollout and teach this in the place of Amnesia. I don't think I'll need the special defense boosting move for later, although sometimes it is helpful to hold on to it all the way until red. I also stopped by the lady in the national park to pick up the Quick Claw. This is going to be the MVP item for Snorlax. Whitney is obviously pretty easy. I picked up the Hardstone just after Faulkner by Violet City. I can use Defense Girl to boost the damage of Rollout and 2-shot the Miltank as a result. For Snorlax, things are inverted when compared with Tauros in the next section of the game. I think the rival is going to be more difficult because he sends in Haunter first, whereas Morty is actually going to be easier because I'll have time to stack up damage with Rollout and then one-shot all of his remaining Pokemon. While I'm going through the lighthouse, this is a perfect opportunity to discuss Snorlax's level up learn set. So at 22, it gets access to Belly Drum. This move, like Curse, halves Snorlax's HP, but instead of inflicting a non-volatile status condition, it maxes out Snorlax's attack stat. Even if I was at -6 attack, I would go all the way to +6 attack. Now, there is also a glitch in Generation 2. If Snorlax has less than 50% HP and it uses Belly Drum, it will still boost your attack by 2 stages. However, it will not lower your HP. This is an interesting quirk, but it's not going to show up today, unfortunately. And in Generation 2, so few Pokemon learn Belly Drum that this is basically never going to be relevant. Well, maybe it could be relevant with a Pokemon like Poliwag or Poliwhirl. Those are the only other 2 that can learn this move. And you might be wondering, what about Poliwrath? Poliwrath can't learn Belly Drum, likely a quirk of the fact that it evolves due to a Water Stone. Now, Belly Drum is obviously a fantastic setup move, so I am going to teach it in the place of Defense Curl for now. Although I haven't really found this move to be particularly useful in solo challenges. Cutting your health is just not ideal when you have to take on an entire team of Pokemon with one of yours. Also, Snorlax's speed definitely makes this move less than ideal. But I think for the ghosts in the next section of the game, it could be very helpful. Beyond that, it learns Snore, Rest, Body Slam, Rollout, and Hyper Beam. Through TM and HM, it gets tons of fantastic moves. I think the ones that I really want to note here are the punches, Ice Punch, Fire Punch, and Thunder Punch, as well as the 3 tutor moves, Flamethrower, Thunderbolt, and Ice Beam. The reason I'm drawing attention to these is they use Snorlax's lower offensive stat, its special stat, because none of the punches are physical in Generation 2. For that reason, outside of some niche scenarios, I don't think they're going to be that useful. Moves like Shadow Ball, which is physical in Generation 1, 2, and 3, as well as Earthquake, are going to have far more synergy with Snorlax's stats. Okay, back to the rival now. First turn, I'm going to go for Belly Drum, maxing out my attack stat. Haunter goes for Curse, and I'm not able to knock it out, so I take Curse damage on the first turn, leaving me with only 29 HP. I really hope from here Rollout is just going to be able to steamroll his team. It doesn't miss on the Magnemite, it doesn't miss on the Zubat, leaving only the Bayleaf, and Rollout successfully hits again, knocking it out easily. For Morty, I've equipped the Mint Berry. I'm also not going to go for Belly Drum here, preserving my HP, because I assume that I might miss 1 or 2 hits. Also, I missed the damage range on the first Haunter, which is unfortunate. Luckily, it fails Hypnosis, so I knock it out with the next Rollout. I continue rolling against the Gengar, finishing it, and I have 1 more turn to connect with the final Haunter. So, Morty's an easy sweep for Snorlax. Okay, back to Whitney for Miltank. In this case, just like Snorlax, Miltank has Defense Curl and Rollout, making this fight really easy. Now, in first playthroughs, I require myself to fight the Sudowoodo. Turns out, this thing is kind of scary for Miltank. I go into the fight slightly damaged, then I set up Defense Curl, misclick on Stomp, and then have to use Rollout. This gives Sudowoodo time to hit me with moves like Rock Throw and Low Kick, and Miltank is brought down to 7 hit points. The tree might actually get me. In this case though, on the turn that really matters, it uses Mimic and I knock it out. Okay, I got lucky there. This levels Miltank up to 19, where I have access to Milk Drink, and you know me, of course I have to teach this move. I love Recovery. I put it in the place of Stomp and then head into Ecruteak City. Following in the footsteps of Snorlax and Tauros, I'm gonna go to the lighthouse first to train up more before coming back and facing the ghosts. With Miltank, it has a different strategy for the rival. It can potentially use Milk Drink to work work around Curse. Although this isn't ideal because Milk Drink only recovers 50% HP and Curse does 25% per turn. So I'm likely going to have to spam multiple Milk Drinks and take less damage than 25% from his Pokemon every turn if I have any hope of accumulating health over time. What I'm really hoping here is Rollout is going to come through for me. Now I want to mention one little nuance that I didn't go into before. That was with Curse, I said that it doesn't deal damage to you on the turn that the Haunter inflicts it. That is only true if you are faster than the Haunter. If you're slower like Snorlax, as we saw prior, it will take damage on the turn that Curse is used. This is because status conditions always deal their damage after your Pokemon moves in this game. So if you've already moved on the turn that Curse is inflicted, it has no opportunity to deal its damage. And then it just waits for the next time that your Pokemon moves. So that's an advantage for both Tauros and Miltank. They can dodge the Curse damage, whereas Snorlax can't really. Unless it is able to one-shot the Haunter, in which case the damage will not be dealt either. In this case, I just go for Rollout right away, and I am able to knock out the Haunter without taking status condition damage. The Magnemite does take 2 hits, so I take some here, but I still have half health left over for the Zubat and of course the Bayleaf. Unfortunately though, I have used all 5 turns of Rollout, so I either have to establish it again or go for Headbutt. In this case I choose the normal type move, it does half, and after using Milk Drink a single time, I can use one more Headbutt to knock out the rival's ace. Now Morty should be fine with Miltank provided it gets good luck with Rollout, and here it doesn't because it misses on the Gengar, gets put to sleep. I have the Mint Berry to counter that out, but then I miss another Rollout. Hypnosis misses, but it doesn't really matter because I'm in a bad situation now. I have to use Milk Drink if I want to survive Curse damage, and then Gengar puts Miltank to sleep and everything falls apart. Provided I hit Rollout on the Gengar, I'm going to be fine. That's what happens in the next battle. I have a chance to learn Bide, which of course I'm going to say no to. I don't see that move being useful in Generation 2. Hopefully I'm never going to have to use it. Anyways, I knock out the final Haunter, and with that Morty's defeated. Okay, for the normal types, where do I go next? I have a choice. I can either go to the Lake of Rage, fight the Rockets, and then take on Pryce, or I can go across the sea and take on Chuck. The optimal play, and I mean by that the play that costs the least amount of time, is always going to face Chuck, unless your Pokemon is going to struggle against him, and that might be the case for these normal types because they're weak to fighting type moves. Although the Primeape tends to not be a threat, and the Poliwrath only has Dynamic Punch, which as we know has 5% accuracy. Because all 3 of these Pokemon are quite strong, I think they'll have what it takes to beat Chuck now. No need to spend extra time walking around the map backtracking without Fly. Now, while I don't think Chuck will be a problem, maybe the tag team trainers just inside the entrance might be. The first one of them has a Hitmonlee, which has Jump Kick. It's going to do 210 effective power against Miltank if it hits. However, I get a critical hit with Headbutt, so I knock it out in 1 turn. After that is Hitmonchan, and while it takes 3 turns to knock out, it has a terrible moveset, so no problems here. Nob is next. He's got 2 good fighting types, but they don't have great fighting type moves, although the Machoke does get scary using Karate Chop getting critical hits, forcing me to use Milk Drink. This is why I love healing moves. I pull through with a victory and then take on Chuck. Okay, Primeape's up first. How's this thing gonna be? I go for Headbutt, doing more than half. Primeape fails a Leer, and then I knock it out. Okay, Chuck, bad as always. What about Poliwrath? Well, Headbutt does about 1/3. It inflicts a flinch. I go for another Headbutt. It looks like it's gonna take 4 turns to knock out. Luckily, Poliwrath misses a Hypnosis on the next turn. I did have a Mint Berry to counter it out though, even if it hit. And then with another Headbutt, I get a critical hit, knocking his ace out. Over the last year, I have been finding that this is just kind of how Chuck goes. If you spam Headbutt, eventually you're just gonna win. It really only gets difficult if you're gonna take like more than 4 turns to knock out the Poliwrath. Then you should probably level up a little bit more. I think for my second run, it probably makes sense for Miltank to be a slightly higher level if I want this to be a consistent 3-shot, which would give me more confidence with this battle. Okay, only one thing to mention in the Rocket plotline. I'm gonna teach Miltank Fire Punch in the place of Rollout. I wanna hold on to Defense Curl for just a little bit longer. Milk Drink is good recovery and Headbutt is my go-to move. So that's why I made this choice. For a long time, I have had a bias against a Rollout, and I've really tried to examine that this year. I think it's a good move. I've been using it more often, but right now I think I need the special damage. I finish off the Rocket plotline and then take on Pryce. He's definitely one of the worst gym leaders in all of Pokemon. Now maybe I should have kept Rollout for this battle. I don't really know. I get brought to low health by the Dugong, so I end up using Milk Drink on the Piloswine. Luckily for me, it's absolutely terrible. It uses Mist followed by Fury Attack twice in a row. And just to emphasize how bad it is, it misses twice with this move, so it does no damage to Miltank. I just spam a bunch of damage dealing moves and eventually it goes down after a Hyper Potion. Okay, from Pryce, we're gonna go straight into the fight with Jasmine. This is why I taught Fire Punch. Before going for it, I'm gonna set up with Defense Curl just once, use the Paralyzed Cure Berry to counter Thunder Wave, and then knock out the Magnemite. Well, that was the plan, but Fire Punch can't one-shot the Magnemite, which is frustrating. So now I'm paralyzed, I take damage from Thunderbolt, Magnemite then confuses me after Miltank can't move, then Miltank hits itself, Miltank takes another Thunderbolt, is fully paralyzed, and that's that. Pretty frustrating, so the answer here is to spam Fire Punch and knock out the Magnemites as soon as is possible. The first one luckily misses Thunder Wave due to the AI debuff, and then the second one, while it hits, it doesn't get 2 turns, so I move on to the Steelix. I can set up Defense Curl before it attacks, it misses an Iron Tail, which is convenient, and then I go for Fire Punch, which looks like it's going to 3-hit, unless I get a crit, and I don't. In this case though, Jasmine doesn't choose to use her Hyper Potion. Because of that, I easily 3-shot and move on to the Rocket plotline. What about Petrol? Well, here's how it goes. I'm not able to one-shot the Coughing, which is pretty frustrating, leaving Miltank exposed to things like Self-Destruct, Smokescreen, and Poison from Sludge. Strangely though, my headbutts all just seem to connect and I don't really miss, sweeping through his team with little to no issues. I don't even have to use Milk Drink once, and that was my fallback strategy. Okay, rival time. This can go bad if the Golbat gets a Confuse Ray off or the Haunter gets a Curse off. Now, I am gonna have to knock the Ghost out with Fire Punch, giving it time to set up the status condition. In this case it does, but then I knock it out on the next turn and he only has a Sneasel and a Meganium left over. I was worried about Reflect, but I can use Milk Drink. I heal a bit, it goes for Poison Powder, and I'm just barely able to squeeze through with a win on 19 hit points. The final Rockets don't give Miltank issues, and then I head through Ice Path, picking up the Never Melt Ice on my way. I think that Ice Punch is going to be the better move against Dragon types, specifically Lance, because his Dragonites take 4 times damage. But Claire is not the same story because they only take 2 times damage, so a powerful normal type move like Return, which I have taught now, is going to be the better choice. I also forgot to snag the Pink Bow inside Radio Tower, so I go back to the first route of the game and quickly give it to Miltank before I take on the 8th Gym Leader. My Miltank is only level 41, but I think Return should have enough oomph to get the job done here. I one-shot the first Dragonair, the second Dragonair, and the third one, leaving only the Kingdra, and if the Dragonairs are 1-hits, then it's going to be a 2-hit. So as long as Smokescreen doesn't happen, I will win. Before heading to Victory Road when doing these solo challenges, you have to make a choice. Do you want to go back throughout Johto and collect rare candies? There are 2 that I pick up at this section of my playthroughs, the one in the Whirl Islands and the one in Mount Mortar. With Miltank, I am going to grab both because I'm a slow growth rate, and I don't want to arrive at red at a level where I get walled. Picking these items up is the conservative play because they do expend a lot of time. In more and more runs this year, I have started skipping them, especially when Pokemon are absolutely fantastic in the late game. An example of that is Scizor, who is currently the #1 spot in the tier list, with an outrageous time of 1 hour, 5 minutes, and 6 seconds. My hypothesis coming into this year was that normal types would be the best performing Pokemon in Crystal version. It just seems like everything is stacked in their favor. Your attack gets a badge boost from Falkner's badge for 12.5%. Then once you defeat Whitney, all normal type moves are increased by 12.5% damage. And finally, you get access to 2 of the most powerful moves, Return with the same type attack bonus, and Curse, which allows you to boost your attack stat and hit harder with Return. Interestingly though, my hypothesis has had a few bugs. Well, 2. Scizor and Scyther. And even Scyther's time of 1 hour, 6 minutes, and 13 seconds is dramatically ahead of the best normal type that I have used so far, which is Furret, that has a time of 1 hour, 8 minutes, and 38 seconds. The way things have been stacking up is starting to suggest that normal types are the second place type. Perhaps bugs are the best? Although, I will mention that the bugs are highly ranked because they got access to the move Swords Dance. They didn't have some innate quality of the bug type that allowed them to excel. This does make me wonder what happens when normal types get access to Swords Dance, but if you quickly check the list of Pokemon that can learn it, there is only a single normal type that has it. Farfetch'd. And earlier in the year, Snowy got a time of 1 hour and 10 minutes with Farfetch'd, and that's also not with my specific rules. My time would be a little bit slower than that, so I'm not hopeful about the duck. Okay, getting back to Miltank. In Victory Road, I pick up the TM for Earthquake, and I teach this right away in the place of Defense Curl before taking on the rival. This ground type move is fantastic here. It allows me to one-shot the Magneton as well as the Haunter. So no more problems due to Curse. With that, Miltank makes it to the Meganium, I two-shot with Return, and now I'm ready for the Elite Four. I made the same choice with Tauros to go to Chuck's Gym. Luckily here, without a critical hit, Headbutt one-shots the Hitmonlee, so I don't have to worry about the fighting types prior to the Gym Leader. Chuck's Primip goes down over 2 turns, also failing a Leer. That's perfect for consistency and comparability between these 2 runs. Then, against Poliwrath, I flinch turn 1, it misses Dynamic Punch, essentially the exact same thing that happened with Miltank, although in this case with Tauros' higher attack stat, it 3 hits easily. Okay, time for Pryce. I don't know what to say. He is pathetic against Tauros. I two-shot the Piloswine, getting a flinch. Aw, I'm so sorry, Piloswine, you had no chance to use Fury attack. Now, Jasmine is a little bit of a different story. Tauros learned Rest through level up, and I figured this was going to be very important for her, because I'm not going to be able to one-shot the Magnemite. Surf just doesn't have the damage necessary with Tauros' low special attack. Because of this, I am going to get paralyzed by the Magnemites. Frustratingly here, because of the status condition and an additional one, Confusion, Tauros isn't able to heal, and it gets knocked out by Thunderbolt and Confusion from the Magnemite. I get to the Steelix in my next battle, so let's see how much damage Surf does, and it's more than half. It's really lucky that this move is super effective against her ace. Iron Tail isn't doing much, so as long as the Magnemites aren't a problem, Tauros isn't going to have issues here. Just like with Miltank, Tauros is not able to one-shot Petrel's Pokemon, but also like Miltank, it just kind of gets a miracle here, flinching a bunch of times. It eventually gets poisoned, but this doesn't matter. I'm still able to pull through. Plus, if I really had to, I could just use Rest to heal the status condition and get full health again. Now, Tauros here again suffers with its move pool. It didn't have Mud Slap in the early game for Ghosts, and now it doesn't have a move that can do super effective damage to Magnemite. I get neutral damage with Surf, but again, I don't want to be using Surf because of Tauros' special attack. I'm not able to one-hit, and as a result, Thunder Wave gets me. With Paralysis, then Haunter is going to move first and be able to curse Tauros. Plus, I have to use Surf, and I can't get rid of the volatile status condition by using Rest. Okay, Sneasel's easy to take care of, so only Meganium is left, but Headbutt is just not doing very much damage, and Tauros does have a reset here. Turns out this one was just player error. If I hold a Paralyzed Cure Berry, then I can two-shot the Magnemite and not be paralyzed for the remainder of the fight. I am still going to get hit by Curse, but I'm not going to have my consistency cut, and I'm also able to move first against the Meganium now, doing damage to it before it sets up with Reflect. That's why I did so little damage before. In this case, I do half damage, and then cause a flinch, knocking it out with my next attack. Tauros is identical for Claire. Return, Pink Bow, one-shot the Dragonairs, two-shot the Kingdra. Okay, slow growth rate, I want to play safe. I'm going to get the Whirl Islands candy and the Mount Mortar candy before crushing the rival prior to the league. Now Tauros has Earthquake, and at long last, it has a solution for Ghost-type Pokemon. Okay, Rapid Fire Snorlax. It goes into Chuck's Gym, and it gets a reset to Hitmonlee. Pretty frustrating. This is the disadvantage of speed. Now, unless I get Quick Claw activations here, I'm not going to make it by the Hitmonlee because it's just going to attack me over and over again, and it survived on a sliver. So I'm going to teleport back to Ecruteak City and instead go to Pryce first. Okay, I want everyone to check this out. This is one of these moments where I have no idea what I was thinking. I have just over half health. I'm fighting the Seal. I am not faster than all of Pryce's Pokemon, and for some reason I choose that the correct play is Belly Drum. Now, the reason I don't know why I did this is because I recorded this run on September 26th. The reason I'm doing the voiceover so much later is because we have been preparing for Daily December for the entire year. I never want to let quality slip just to get out more videos, so I had to plan the entire year around a lighter first section and then a heavier second section to make sure that I could do all the fun things around Halloween as well as here at the very end of the year. This does sometimes lose us context, like in this case. After Belly Drum I have 6 hit points, and yeah, Seal just knocks Snorlax out with Icy Wind. Not my best moment. Anyway, if I heal before Pryce, then I should be able to use Belly Drum. Icy Wind can't do very much damage because Snorlax has incredible special defense. Nice. Beyond that, I'm going to use Headbutt to one-shot his remaining Pokemon. Just like with Miltank for Jasmine, I'm going to be using Fire Punch. In this case though, I still have held on to Mud Slap, which could be useful for the Magnemites. We'll go through those damage ranges later. For now though, I went with Fire Punch, and it is able to one-shot both of them. So Steelix is last, I use Fire Punch, it does more than half and inflicts a burn, which is perfect. Iron Tail does pathetic damage, and with that, Jasmine's defeated. Before taking on the tag team trainers again in Chuck's gym, I teach Return to Snorlax in the place of Mud Slap. Also, the Quick Claw activates against the Hitmonlee, so I move first, using Return and one-shot. Turns out though, Snorlax is not through the most difficult part of this gym. It's actually Chuck. I try using Belly Drum, get hit by Leer. Finally, the Primeape was actually useful. It then strikes back with Karate Chop, gets a crit, and Snorlax faints. Okay, instead of Belly Drum, let's just attack. Return one-shots the Primeape, I move on to the Poliwrath, then it moves first, hits Hypnosis, and Snorlax falls asleep. That is a consequence of using the Quick Claw. I'm not going to wake up. Poliwrath takes aim with Mind Reader, then uses Dynamic Punch, inflicting massive damage and confusing Snorlax. But what's the chance it hits another Dynamic Punch? Well, it's 50%, and in this case it gets lucky. Snorlax goes down, and that's my second reset to Chuck. So one way or another, Snorlax is going to need luck here. Either Quick Claw activations, or countering out one of the status conditions with a berry. I decided to once again run the Quick Claw. It does come through for me here. After getting hit by a Dynamic Punch, Snorlax doesn't hit itself in confusion, uses Headbutt and does more than half. Then the Quick Claw activates, and Headbutt gets the knockout. Snorlax is the only of these three Pokemon that's able to one-shot Petrel's Coughing, making the fight incredibly consistent. There might be some problems against the rival with Confusion from the Golbat or Thunder Wave from the Magnemite, but in this case, Fire Punch gets a one-hit, so pretty good. Beyond that, I get a crit on the Haunter. I'm not sure if this helped me, but I avoid curse damage on turn 1. While I'm not faster than the Meganium, I get a critical hit bypassing the Reflect and return one-shots. So it appears that Snorlax got lucky here. And it's also going to need to get a little bit lucky against Claire. Her Dragonairs have 66 speed, and Snorlax only has 58. So I'm not going to be moving first, even though I'm going to one-shot. The first one misses Thunder Wave, the second one goes for Slam instead of inflicting the status condition. The third one does, but I have a Paralyzed Cure Berry, so I make it to the Kingdra and then just 2-hit. For the rival before the league, you'll notice that I didn't teach Earthquake to Snorlax. It's because I'm holding on to Belly Drum, and Headbutt is kind of useful. I have Fire Punch for the Magneton, and I did think this would do enough damage, but it doesn't in this case, so I probably should have let go of the Fire-type move and got the Ground-type move in its place. Either way, Snorlax is still able to get a victory here, so I don't have an issue. Now, all three Pokemon are ready for the league. Let's do this. I taught Miltank Shadow Ball for Will. This gives me slightly better damage, and I mean slightly better damage when compared with Return using the Pink Bow. I also could have picked up the Spell Tag in Blackthorn City and then used this for even more damage, although it ends up not being necessary. In general, Will is just not very good. Koga follows, and things are slow here, especially against the Fortress, which I have to knock out over 4 turns using Earthquake. Beyond that, I two-shot the Muck and the Crobat. This is where things get a little bit more difficult in the league for normal-type Pokemon. I have to go up against Bruno. With the slow growth rate, Miltank is only level 45 by this point in the playthrough, and I have 7 rare candies, so I'm going to use them now to go up to level 52 to hopefully give myself the best possible chance against the upcoming threat. Okay, I want to check in with what I said before about speed. Miltank is so much faster than all of Bruno's Pokemon, even the Hitmonlee. I can one-shot it with Return, then the Hitmonchan has priority Mach Punch, so it moves first, but doesn't do a lot of damage because Miltank has good defense. That leads to Machamp, and unless it gets a critical hit with Cross Chop, I should win here. Return does much more than half, and then Cross Chop does get a critical hit. It inflicts massive damage, and Miltank faints. Okay, so when Machamp fails the Cross Chop, then I will win. It does in the next battle. Bruno tries to save it with a Max Potion, but this doesn't help. I move on to the Onix, and while Earthquake can't one-shot, the Onix is just pathetic. It does like 20 hit points of damage, and then I knock it out. All that's left is Karen. I can two-shot the Umbreon with Return. Miltank does get hit by Sand Attack, which is a little bit of a nuisance, but this doesn't prevent me from one-shotting the following Vileplume. I do miss on the Gengar, and it goes for Spite, draining PP from Earthquake, but I still have Shadow Ball if I really need it. Beyond that, it's a Murkrow, which rarely is relevant, and finally Houndoom just goes down to a single hit from Earthquake. Before Lance, I'm going to teach Ice Punch. I think this is going to do more damage to the Dragonites when compared with Return, even though Miltank has vastly less special attack. Gyarados is first, and I'm going to two-shot using Return. It just sets up Rain Dance and then faints. So will Ice Punch one-shot the first level 47 Dragonite? And the answer is no, but it does inflict a freeze, so I get it for free anyway. The next one successfully lands a Thunder Wave, so Miltank is paralyzed. I figured I could just win slowly using Milk Drink, but then Aerodactyl gets a critical hit using Hyper Beam. And I had already selected my move, so I knock it out and then Charizard comes in. That means I'm not going to be able to use Milk Drink before it attacks. As a result, there's no point in healing. I just go for Return, but it's not enough. Flamethrower gets Miltank. Okay, so there's a simple solution here. If I can't one-shot the Dragonites, then I should use Rest in the place of Milk Drink so that I can heal the status condition and make it through the remainder of the fight without paralysis. Things get close here because Charizard gets a critical hit with Flamethrower, bringing Miltank down to red health. 8 hit points remained. Thing is, because Miltank is very fast, I can just rest up, wait for the Charizard to use something like Hyper Beam, which eventually it does do. It has to recharge, and as a result, I knock out Lance's penultimate Pokemon. Last is his Ace Dragonite. I go for Ice Punch, and while it isn't able to get the one hit, I easily survive Outrage and win on my next turn. So for Miltank, it earns itself a sub-hour Lance split, 59 minutes and 54 seconds. Tauros is unfortunately just not going to be able to compete with this. By the time it's starting Will, the clock has just ticked over 1 hour. That said, Tauros is a beast here. It just goes to town, one-shotting most of Will's Pokemon other than the Exeggutor and the Slowbro, because those two always seem to survive one hit. It continues being excellent against Koga, and then like Miltank before Bruno, I use Rare Candies, going up in this case to level 53, one level higher. So I assume that Tauros isn't going to have issues here. Return one-shots the Hitmontop, the Hitmonlee, and the Hitmonchan. Question is, will the Bull give Machamp a chance to use Cross Chop? And the answer is no, even though it didn't get a critical hit. Last is Onix, and Tauros still has Surf. Okay, Karen, she fails her Sand attack with Umbreon, and that is a wrap for the Dark-type specialist. There's nothing she can do to Tauros now. Okay, for Lance, I'm going to have to utilize the rest strategy because Tauros has no chance of one-shotting the Dragonites. It's going to get paralyzed at some point, so I'll just have to take my time and heal up. Luckily, the second Dragonite likes to use Hyper Beam, so it has to recharge, giving me some time to heal and then knock it out. For Aerodactyl, I wasn't sure if Return or Surf would be the better choice. Aerodactyl has lower physical defense than it has special defense, which always surprises me since it is a Rock-type Pokemon. I chose to go for Return, and this gets a 2-hit. I think it would have been the same scenario with Surf. Charizard falls to a single Return because I got a critical hit, leaving only one Dragonite. Because Tauros has green health, it doesn't choose to attack, instead using Safeguard, and then after a full restore, I knock it out and defeat Lance. Tauros gets a time of 1 hour, 3 minutes, and 48 seconds. Hopefully to this point, you can see how similar Miltank and Tauros are. The main difference between the two is just Tauros has no answers for ghosts, but Miltank does. With Snorlax though, I've been playing very differently, and I'm going to continue that, using my Rare Candies before I even go in to face Will. Snorlax is slower than 3 of his Pokemon, but it will move first against the Exeggutor and the Slowbro. The big advantage the Sleepy Bear has during this fight is its outrageous special defense. Will's Pokemon essentially can't touch me. Now, Koga's could, but I've held on to Fire Punch for this fight so I can one-shot the Fortress, avoiding the loss of time that the other 2 Pokemon had here. Also, Return one-shots the Muk, which I wasn't expecting, and the following Crobat. Now, I need a solution for Bruno's Onix, so I'm going to teach Ice Punch in the place of Fire Punch. At level 52, Snorlax is speed tied with Hitmontop. I win the coin flip, move first, and knock it out with a single hit. From here, I'm slower than Bruno's 3 middle Pokemon, but I am faster than the Machamp. Hitmonlee misses a high jump kick, crashes, and goes down to Return. Hitmonchan does a little bit of damage with Mach Punch, leading to the Machamp. It's slower, so I go for Headbutt, hoping for a flinch. I don't get one, Cross Chop still hits, but it doesn't crit, so Snorlax survives and knocks out Bruno's ace. Last is Onix. It's faster, hits with Earthquake, doesn't do very much, and Ice Punch gets the one-shot. I have to say, I did think Snorlax was gonna struggle here a little bit more. Unfortunately, the struggle comes against Karen. Here, I only have Ice Punch for the Gengar, and after it uses Curse, I can't knock it out. Then Gengar goes for Destiny Bond and takes Snorlax down with it. Okay, so I've held on to Belly Drum for way too long. The solution here is just to get rid of it and use Earthquake to knock out the Gengar. From there, one-shot the Murkrow and the Houndoom. Okay, I said I was going to go through all of the Snorlax stuff fairly quickly. I tried this battle without rest, using both Headbutt and Return. Occasionally, I could flinch if I really wanted to. Also, I should mention the fact that Snorlax is closer to one-shotting the Dragonites than the other two, but it still gets paralyzed. Because of this, I'm not able to heal, and eventually I faint to the final Dragonite, wasting a bunch of time. The solution is teach rest, come back to Lance, heal the status condition at some point later into the fight, like here against Aerodactyl, and then make it by his final 3 Pokemon. Snorlax defeats Lance with a time of 1 hour, 2 minutes, and 49 seconds. After everything these Pokemon have gone through, they are very close together. Miltank is in the lead, Snorlax is in second place despite its awful speed, and Tauros is taking up the rear, mostly because of the ghosts. Luckily, I have a good solution for them in my second playthrough, as I'm sure you will have anticipated. Okay, Kanto. All 3 of these Pokemon have no resets to the first 7 gym leaders. I'm gonna resume talking about these runs at Blue. For Snorlax, I have taught it Curse by this point in the game because this Pokemon doesn't care about its speed. This is a late game advantage for it. It can spam Curse as much as it wants and it doesn't really get a disadvantage. It only has upside. Well, I guess Blue's Rhydon can move first, it's usually quite slow. I don't care, it just sets up Sandstorm, but I'm healing so much health every turn with leftovers that this is a net neutral interaction. So Snorlax of course takes an easy win here. Well, I was a little bit scared when I got burned by the Arcanine. Sometimes this does cause problems where you don't one hit and then he uses a bunch of full restores, wasting time. But no, Snorlax still just has way more than enough attack stat. Prior to Red, the Sleepy Bear is level 61 and I have 2 more rare candies. I use them both to go over a damage rounding threshold at level 63, but this is still quite under-leveled. So maybe Red can give me problems. Let's find out. Here's the thing, 5 of Red's Pokemon are special attackers. Only the Snorlax prominently attacks with physical moves. Occasionally, under really weird circumstances, Pikachu will use Quick Attack, Espeon will use Swift or Mud Slap, and Charizard will use Wing Attack or Slash. But those things won't be relevant today because Snorlax takes neutral damage from all of Red's moves. The thing about Snorlax that's so good here is its special defense. I am taking so little damage from Red's Pikachu's attacks that I figured I could just set up with Curse here. Eventually, it's going to run out of Thunders because this move only has 10 PP, and then it's going to be even easier to continue my setup. From here, I expect the remainder of his team is all going to be simple, provided he doesn't get a critical hit. Espeon uses Psychic, doing decent damage, then I knock it out with Return. Snorlax comes in, it's just going to spam Body Slam, so I might as well use Rest, heal up, and then knock it out. On the turn I wake up and I use my Return though, I get hit by Body Slam and paralyzed, which is unfortunate. I wanted to heal the status condition against Venusaur, so I go for Rest. It sets up Sunny Day and then starts attacking with Solar Beam. The second of these gets a critical hit, bringing Snorlax to low health, and I am unable to survive another hit or stall out the sun, so that's a loss. I took a different approach in the next fight, set up twice against the Pikachu, knocked it out, knocked the Espeon out, and then completed my setup against the Snorlax. If I take my time here, I can waste all of its PP of Body Slam and then ensure that I'm never paralyzed for the remainder of the fight. This takes some time, it's annoying, but eventually I pull it off, knock out the Snorlax, the Venusaur, the Charizard, and the Blastoise. Snorlax clocks in with a time of 1 hour, 22 minutes, and 1 second, with 8 resets, 0 blackouts at level 64. This result has a game time of 5 hours and 2 minutes. Before moving on, I just quickly want to check in with the tier list. Snorlax's prior time of 1 hour and 30 minutes has been beaten, so today, even if it has a terrible second run, it is still going to get itself a better placement in the tier list. Okay, Tauros is next. In this case, I have taught it Curse for the blue fight, but I'm only going to use it once to improve my attack by 1 stage. Then I am still faster than a bunch of his Pokemon. The Rhydon, the Gyarados, the Exeggutor, and yes, the Arcanine. I have 136 speed and it has 130. So the only Pokemon that's moving faster than me is the Alakazam. I can tank a Psychic pretty easily and then go to town on the remaining Pokemon. Unfortunately, Rhydon is defensive enough to survive my hit and set up Sandstorm before it goes down. This is a little bit annoying, but since I'm faster than his remaining Pokemon, I'm really just wasting time with the text from Sandstorm and the HP bar moving around. I am still going to sweep the remaining 3 Pokemon on his team. So blue was easy, what about red? With Tauros, it doesn't make sense to set up on the Pikachu or the Espeon, so I'm just going to knock both of them out using Return. I was a little bit surprised when the Evolution survived my attack. Luckily, it doesn't choose Psychic, instead it just goes for Reflect. So I still have full health for the Snorlax, meaning it's going to choose Amnesia first turn. Or I thought that was what it was going to do, instead it attacks with Body Slam, but I've already started to set up Curse. So here, I'm going to max out my attack and my defense. Hopefully, Snorlax will not get a crit, and in this case, it doesn't. Believe me, that's going to be relevant in a little bit. But in this case, I make it past it onto the Venusaur, which goes for Solar Beam, so I get it for free. Charizard does half with Flamethrower. I move on to the Blastoise, healing a little bit with Leftovers. I choose Return, it sets up Rain Dance, and I come through with a victory. Tauros clocks in with a first playthrough result of 1 hour 20 minutes and 39 seconds, with 6 resets, 0 blackouts at level 67. This result has a game time of 5 hours and 2 minutes. So Tauros beats the game faster than Snorlax, but they had the exact same game time. So don't count out the Sleepy Bear when these two do follow-up playthroughs. With Miltank after a single curse, I wasn't faster than the Arcanine, so I just went for full setup here and then swept Blue's team. At Red is where things get really interesting, so look at Miltank's level, 61. It is the lowest of the three fighting the final trainer. Now, this has a consequence. Remember how Blastoise used Rain Dance on Tauros because I had enough health? Well, in this case, I'm at a lower level, so my special defense is lower than it was with Tauros. And so Miltank is going to take more damage from the Charizard and the Blastoise. Plus, in this specific battle, the Venusaur uses Sunny Day turn 1. This improves the damage of Flamethrower, so I get taken to low health, and then Blastoise sees that it can get the KO, so it's always attacking. I'm trying to stall it out, hoping that it'll maybe choose Rain Dance. I'm using Protect, but this doesn't work. In the end, it hits with Blizzard and Miltank faints. I tried again. Sometimes Miltank gets crit by Snorlax and loses. As I said before, it was going to be relevant with Tauros. It could have happened there, but it just didn't. I was getting lucky. And we have to remember that Miltank has better defense, so this would have been even more devastating using the Bull. I get crit by Snorlax again, which is really frustrating. This is always the risk you run though whenever you're choosing to use a curse strategy. I get to the Venusaur on my next attempt and I'm hoping that it's going to go for Solar Beam, but once again it chooses Sunny Day. If this happens, I don't think that Miltank can win unless he gets lucky with Blastoise missing a Blizzard. For that reason I continue playing, but the turtle doesn't miss. I lose again to a Body Slam crit. And then because of paralysis from Body Slam. This is getting really old. And look at the clock. Miltank has passed Tauros' time and is now looking like it might slip behind Snorlax. And I have to take a long time in this battle to heal, use rest, protect occasionally. One thing I can do again is stall out Snorlax's PP so that it can't use Body Slam anymore. But to do this I have to get hit by a lot of Body Slams so it has more chances to get critical hits. I tried to make it by the Venusaur, it sets up Sunny Day, and this one once again ends in defeat for Miltank, so it's going to get the slowest time out of the three in its first playthrough. It feels really bad to see this happen because Miltank by far up until this section of the game had the easiest time. It had answers for ghosts early on with Mud Slap, it had a fast speed stat and a decent attack stat, enough to manage most of the game fairly easily. And this is sometimes a phenomenon that happens. A Pokemon doesn't have struggles early on, meaning it arrives at the late game at a lower level and then gets walled by the final trainer. Whereas Tauros, that had to play a little bit more conservatively, level up from Morty, ends the game roughly 5 levels higher, and so it's able to defeat the final trainer in a much easier way. Although I really do want to caveat all of this, because in my first attempt against Red, the Venusaur chose Solar Beam against Tauros, and that was exclusively luck. It could have picked Sunny Day. Now watching this footage back, as I reset to Red over and over and over again, I realized that I could have played the Snorlax fight against Red a little bit differently with Miltank. I could have defeated it with lower health and then hoped that the Venusaur would have chosen Solar Beam. If I then used Protect alternating with Return against the Charizard and the Blastoise, maybe, just maybe, I could have survived on a sliver of health and still pulled through with a win. Still, even without that strategy, eventually the Venusaur is going to use Solar Beam, but not this time. I have 16 resets now total. It chose Sunny Day once again. I don't really know what to do. I'm going to take massive damage from Flamethrower, move on to the Blastoise. Okay, is this the time where Blizzard misses? And the answer is yes, it does. I hit Red's final Pokemon with Return one last time, and it faints. Miltank clocks in with a disappointing first playthrough time of 1 hour 26 minutes and 13 seconds, with 16 resets at level 64. But it did get the best game time of the three, with a time of 4 hours and 51 minutes. Also, you'll notice there's a discrepancy between starting the fight against Red at level 61 and then ending it at level 64. I realized I had rare candies and used them during the multiple attempts fighting Red. Alright, so here's the timeline graphs of our first playthroughs. You can see that Tauros has a rough early game, but it was able to gain back a lot of time after defeating Lance. So much so that it squeezed in with the best time of these three normal types. That said, a time around 1 hour and 20 minutes is not going to be competitive with the top performers in the tier list. Now, I want to look at real time by trainer. This graph shows the sad story of Miltank, where it's just ahead of both of the other two Pokemon throughout the majority of the game. Snorlax and Tauros are actually really close in the late stages of the game, but then finally at Red, Miltank's graph just kind of goes vertical and it gets the worst time. That said, let's look at the summaries for these first 3 playthroughs. These are the moves and the items that I used for every trainer, just in case you want to recreate these runs yourself. There is one major shakeup that I'm now going to introduce to these playthroughs that is going to give Tauros a significant advantage over the other two, and that is hidden power. And I think it alone is going to give Tauros so much of an advantage that the other two Pokemon don't really have a chance. So we'll save Tauros's follow-up playthrough for last. Let's start with Snorlax. This has to be one of the more subtle Pokemon to do an optimized playthrough with. There are so many little things that I picked up along the way, having many failed attempts. By far, Snorlax was the least intuitive of these 3 Pokemon to optimize. And I don't say that lightly, because Snorlax, after all, is very heavy. Okay, the first thing we need to realize is with all 3 of these Pokemon, I'm going to be able to beat Falkner on minimum battles. There's no reason to waste time here where experience yields are really bad. The wall for most Pokemon is Birdkeeper Abe, but with a berry, Snorlax can pull through 4-shotting with Tackle. Even if the Spearow gets a critical hit, I will still win. The downside for Snorlax is that it has so much health that healing with potions doesn't make a ton of sense at this point in the game, and I don't have very many potions after all. So usually if I take a lot of damage, I'll just backtrack to the Pokemon Center and heal up, avoiding using 2 potions at once. Falkner is straightforward, just spam Tackle, and with a berry, I have enough health to win. This is where things slow down. I'm going to battle every trainer from here on until Bugsy. The goal is to get to level 15 before him so that I have access to Defense Curl. It makes the battle so much easier. One subtle thing to remember here is that you only need to set up your defense to the point that Fury Cutter is doing the minimum amount of damage on the first turn, because after that it's just going to double its damage on each successive hit. The number for Snorlax is 3 uses of Defense Curl. After that I can sweep his team, and I'll take minimum damage from the Scyther. Okay, the next thing I learned took me a while. So the Ghastly kept annoying me, causing Snorlax resets in a bunch of my playthroughs, and every time I would get 1 or 2, I would just restart the entire run, wasting roughly 11 to 13 minutes on each restart. This grew more and more frustrating, and then I saw what the solution was. Amnesia has so much PP. I can literally just spam this move against Ghastly. Even if it puts me to sleep a lot with Hypnosis, eventually the Ghastly is going to run out of Spite. When this happens, it's going to get locked into using Hypnosis or Lick, 2 moves that won't have an impact on my PP of Mudslap, and then I can knock it out consistently. This takes a while, it's pretty annoying, but it is the most consistent way to beat the rival without getting a reset. That said, to play this way, it does cost time, which matters in this kind of solo challenge. Although, what I was finding up until this point in the run is that there are a whole bunch of small things that can just kind of go wrong, like missing against Bugsy when using Tackle, so I didn't want to repeat the early game over and over again and constantly have restarts. Anyways, I played safely. If you're interested in getting the best possible time with Snorlax, then don't do this strategy, just attack with Mudslap right away and cross your fingers. Okay, as I said before, these second runs are going to be vastly different because of Hidden Power. With all 3 of these normal types, I believe the best choice here is to go Hidden Power Ground. This lowers your attack DV to 12 out of 15, and it lowers your HP to 7 out of 15. But the advantage that all 3 of these Pokemon get from having a physical ground type move in the mid game is immense. You can see that here with Snorlax. I don't have to rely on rollout for Morty. I can just spam Hidden Power Ground and one-shot all of his Pokemon. I tried to make Chuck first work with Snorlax, and I couldn't figure out how to do it in a way that I was satisfied with. I think that fighting Pryce first is the safer choice, so that's what I go with here. Also, throughout this section of the game, I have not fallen victim to the belly drum trap. That move is really not the better choice. At least in Pokemon Crystal. Maybe in a future game, Snorlax will rely on it. Before going to Chuck, I faced Jasmine. I had thought of doing some additional training to bring Snorlax up to level 33 to fight the Steelix, because at level 32, Fire Punch is just 2-hitting. I have a 27% chance to get the 2-hit, but at level 33 it would be guaranteed. There is a little bit of other upside here, which is I could get critical hits with Fire Punch or a Burn, and Jasmine can also fail to use her Hyper Potion, which would give me the win. Also, Iron Tail can miss, so there's a lot of ways that Snorlax can win at the lower level, and I didn't really think it justified the extra training because Snorlax Snorlax has a slow growth rate, so it takes a while. I end up with 1 reset here, and then I defeat Jasmine. Taking care of her first gives me the badge boost for my defense stat against Chuck, and at level 34 I can 2-shot the Poliwrath. As should be obvious, Hidden Power Ground solves Petrol's entire team. I use Return for Claire, and then with Snorlax, I use my rare candies after defeating Koga. This gives me 53 for Bruno, and I think these damage ranges are worth investigating. Snorlax is actually capable of one-shotting the Machamp even without a critical hit, so it has a 30.6% chance of knocking out his ace in 1 turn. Now there are some problems here. If Hitmonlee attacks with High Jump Kick, it does between 32 and 38% damage. Mach Punch from Hitmonchan is going to do 14 to 17% damage. And then with a non-crit Cross Chop, Machamp deals between 48 and 57% damage. With the minimum damage rolls from each one of these moves, Snorlax will survive, but with the maximum damage rolls, it will not. So there's a chance that Bruno gets me even if I just play straight up. Although there's upside from Hitmonlee missing and potentially one-shotting the Machamp because Snorlax is faster. By the way, I think this is the thing that I'm most disappointed about in this run. I'm using Fire Punch, forgetting the fact that I'll just barely survive these hits. So when I make it to the Onix, this is the Pokemon that gets me. I have to use Ice Punch so that I can one-shot it after surviving the other fighting types. Return, Rest, and Ice Punch are more than enough for Lance, and then I stomp Kanto, make it back to blue, or I use the Curse strategy, and then things continue to be the same against Red. This time Snorlax arrives at level 64. I did skip 1 rare candy, which would have brought me up over the damage rounding threshold to level 65, but that would just be wasted time because Curse is all I need here. I wanted to find a way to do this battle at a lower level, but pushing Bruno under level 53 didn't feel like the right solution, and in order to fight Bruno at that level with the minimum possible time, I had to pick up all of the rare candies in Johto. Then from that point on, I'm on the rails of destiny and I just arrive here at level 64 anyway. I could have done the fight at level 62 and skipped the 2 rare candies, the one on Cinnabar Island and the one in Vermilion City, but those waste so little time that I thought I might as well have them. Against Red, Snorlax does not need full setup, it can stop at +4 and then one-shot all of his Pokemon. I have no resets here, and in my 3rd playthrough I clock in with a final time of 1 hour 15 minutes and 48 seconds, with 4 resets, 0 blackouts at level 65 with a game time of 4 hours and 48 minutes. This is roughly 15 minutes of time saved from my previous Snorlax playthrough, so that's a major improvement. It's also giving Miltank a run for its money. Here's the thing though, Miltank also gets access to Hidden Power Ground. It stabilizes the mid-game, especially the Morty fight, just a little bit, because I don't have to rely on rollout for his team. Also, I'm doing things out of order here, we're gonna go back to the rival. Hidden Power Ground is also really helpful here, although Miltank at level 22 does not one-shot the first Haunter. It's kind of annoying, but Curse doesn't cause problems because then I can one-shot the Magnemite that follows, so I'm not taking passive damage. I won't hit the Zubat, make it to the Bayleaf, and this is just too late for the rival to turn the tides. Okay, for Jasmine's Steelix, is Hidden Power Ground better or is Fire Punch better? The answer is Fire Punch. I have to 3-shot her ace, which is a bit annoying, but Miltank's higher defensive stat comes through for it here, so it doesn't take much damage from Iron Tail. My goal level for Bruno with Miltank is also 53. This way I'm going to one-shot all the Hitmons and 2-shot the Machamp and the Onix. Unlike Snorlax though, I don't have to worry about speed, so this fight is far more consistent, provided Cross Chop doesn't get a critical hit. That is really the only caveat for all of these normal types. If you just rare candy before Bruno, you will be fine as long as Cross Chop doesn't get the crit. With Miltank, I did go and get the Whirl Islands candy, and I also got the one from Mount Mortar. This is just to solve a small damage range against Bruno because at level 51, which is 2 candies lower, I would only have an 80.8% chance to one-hit the Hitmontop. It seems like I should have just skipped those rare candies and saved the time, but there's actually a reason that they're relevant, because I want to make it to Red at a slightly higher level than I was last time. In this case, 65. Now, I could have problems from the Snorlax critical hitting, but in this case, every time it gets a crit or it deals a little bit of damage, I just immediately heal to ensure that Miltank is going to survive long enough. Here's where things get really precise. These are the damage ranges with Harsh Sunlight. So, Flamethrower is boosted and it does between 69 and 82% damage. Following that, Blizzard is going to do between 32 and 37% damage. So with minimum damage rolls, Flamethrower and Blizzard together will knock Miltank out. But we have to remember remember that I'm recovering health every turn with the leftovers. This recovers 6.25% HP per turn, and I'm going to be able to trigger the health recovery on 2 turns guaranteed. The first turn when the Blastoise comes in, and then a second turn after I use Protect once. That's 12.5% more HP. So with some of the damage rolls, I will survive the hit from Blastoise and knock it out with Return. It happens in my first attempt, so Miltank clocks in with an incredible third playthrough time, 1 hour, 12 minutes, and 35 seconds. It got 0 resets, 0 blackouts, finished the game at level 66, and had a great game time of 4 hours and 44 minutes. Okay, is everyone ready to see the bull absolutely demolish Pokemon Crystal? That's what I was thinking, and then I played Tauros. Even with Hidden Power Ground, I still have to fight the rival in Azalea Town using Struggle, and this wastes a bunch of time. Not to mention, Struggle is still not consistent in knocking out his Pokemon. I did figure out that I should be holding a Poison Cure Berry just to counter out Poison Powder if the Bayleaf chooses to go for it. It makes the fight slightly more consistent, but in my third playthrough I still get 2 resets. From there I have very little to say, like Surf is still pretty good throughout the mid-game, I can get rid of it later with the move deleter in Blackthorn City, and Hidden Power Ground does successfully take out most of the bumps from the playthrough, like for example the Magnemite and Haunter on the rivals team. Tauros seriously dominates in this fight. Now I've taken a similar approach to Bruno. Here Tauros is 1 level higher. This is because of the training it had to do in the early game to beat the rival in Azalea Town. Again, from that point I'm kind of on rails. I guess I could have skipped 1 rare candy, but I didn't want to do that because Bruno is not the worst trainer for Tauros. With a high speed stat and a high attack stat, this is not a problem, again provided the Machamp doesn't get a critical hit. Against Lance, Return and Rest are enough for this fight. Notice that my set is kind of strange, Hidden Power Ground and Earthquake. I just don't have a good 4th move. That's the only reason I have these moves. Okay, let's punch into the blue fight and just check out how things are going here. Honestly, they're fine. Tauros still only has the 2 resets from the rival in Azalea Town. It is fantastic up until this point of the game after it gets out of the early game. Thing is, up until this point in the run, you can see on the right hand side of the screen that it is not doing much better than it was in my second playthrough. I finished that one with a time of 1 hour 20 minutes and 33 seconds, and hopefully you can see the massive time jump from Blue's 1 hour 13 minutes and 51 second split all the way to Red's final time. This is the unfortunate fact about Tauros. Unlike the other 2 slow growth rate normal types, which don't really have a problem against Red, provided you get Miltank to level 65 where it can survive those hits from the final 2 Pokemon, which wasn't the case in the first run and then they just got stomped. But with Tauros, that's not the case. It has a lower defense stat, and it also has a lower special defense stat, so it has neither of the defensive advantages that the other 2 have. It has the same special defense as Miltank, so it needs to be at least the same level to defeat the Charizard followed by the Blastoise, for the reasons I've mentioned before. But it's also weaker to Snorlax when that thing gets critical hits. And this whole fight just kind of falls apart because of that. This Pokemon ends up being quite frustrating to solo run, because in the early game there's nothing you can do to solve the rival in Azalea Town. Then you get to the late game, and there isn't really anything you can do at Red. If you're level 65, there's a chance that you can win, but there's also a chance that you'll just lose somewhere during the fight by taking too much damage or being crit by a Snorlax. I did 3 playthroughs with each of these Pokemon, and in both of the follow-ups with Tauros, I got very unlucky. In my third playthrough, I reset over and over and over again, taking a total of 11 in the playthrough. So that is 9 more on Red, and these are not quick resets. I finished the game with a dismal 1 hour, 24 minute, and 25 second third playthrough time. This is 3 minutes and 52 seconds slower than my second playthrough result, so that ends up being Tauros's best time. And the really sad thing about that is that it is faster than my first playthrough time, but only by seconds. Literally 6 seconds. I don't think on the channel before I have played a Pokemon that seems like it's going to be good, and then it ends up just falling apart even when it gets an amazing move throughout the mid-game in the second and third playthrough. I was left kind of stupefied after these playthroughs. Like, I genuinely just sat there and was like, what went wrong? Like, what could have I done better? And I don't really know. If I go into the red fight at a lower level, like, what advantage do I get? I'm still going to be weak to all the stuff I'm currently weak to, and even more so at the Charizard and the Blastoise. If I go into the fight at a higher level, I just sacrifice time and I don't really gain an advantage. I'm still just just going to be one-hitting after using Curse. If you're wondering, can Tauros do this without setup, the answer is unfortunately no, not at this level. It would need to level up more to do that. And as a result, its time just wouldn't be competitive with the current result. Now, you can't see me right now, but I'm making this kind of like stink face because I'm just sad about Tauros. In Generation 1, it didn't seem very good the last time I played it, although that was a long time ago. And usually what happens when I play a Pokemon that is perceived to be good in the community and then get bad results with it is that everyone just says that I'm a bad player in the comments. So I'm anticipating that I'm gonna feel pretty bad about myself after releasing this video. Anyways, be kind. I did my best. I played this thing 3 times and I just wasn't able to get good results with it. I'm sure in the future, for that reason alone, I'm gonna come back and revisit Tauros. That said, we're just going to quickly cut back to the footage right before I faced Red. Even if I had beat him on the first attempt with Tauros, I still would have got a worse time than Snorlax. So look at the thumbnail, see how Snorlax is really coming for these 2 Pokemon? Miltank was able to squeeze away, but Tauros wasn't. Okay, time to rank these Pokemon. With Snorlax's new results, it earns itself a placement at the top of the A tier, beating out Pokemon like Blastoise, Celebi, and Typhlosion. I'm sure I'm going to have to re-rank those ones at some point. I think they'll be better than Snorlax overall, but this is a pretty good position for this normal type. Miltank, on the other hand, did quite well, but not well enough to beat out Ursaring, Clefable, or Granbull. So it earns itself a placement near the middle of the S tier, just ahead of Pokemon like Feraligatr, Heracross, and Lugia. And finally, our disappointing bull, Tauros, today, with its dismal results, gets itself the top spot of the B tier, not even making it into the A tier. It's behind Pokemon that didn't do particularly well, like Raikou, Azumarill, Raticate, those kind of things. I'm not super hopeful for Tauros' future, but I'm sure eventually it'll get results under an hour and 20 minutes. But I think under an hour and 15 might be challenging with how awful its early game is. So sitting back and looking at everything, did the normal types make a dent today? No, the bug types are still reigning supreme. I think if anything, these 3 runs today prove that normal types are pretty good in Pokemon Crystal. Like, they have brain-dead approaches to the game. Hidden Power Ground, just kind of use Return for everything and you'll probably win. Especially when you have coverage moves like Ice Punch. Those can be helpful in some niche scenarios, like Bruno's Onix and Lance's team. Still though, these are slow growth rate normal types. We were expecting them to do badly. But what about normal types that don't have the slow growth rate? What about Pokemon like Kangaskhan, Chansey, and Blissey? So next week we're going to have to see how those 3 do in Pokemon Crystal. Now if you want to go and do your own Tauros, Miltank, or Snorlax playthroughs, here are the run summaries that I had from my final 3rd playthroughs of all of them. If you support me on Patreon or through YouTube memberships, thank you so much, it means the world to me. Now, if you've made it this far, you are incredible. I will see you tomorrow when Daily December continues.